Okay, hello, everyone. Welcome to Birthing the Gifts. I am clinical psychologist Dr. Kyla Holmes, and here at Birthing the Gifts, we provide a safe and compassionate space to grow your God-given gifts. So, if people have been following us, they know what we talk about in this It's a Process conversation series. And so, basically, we talk about the process of giving birth to your gifts and what that's like, all the ebbs and flows involved in people giving birth to their gifts. So today we have with us my cousin auntie, Ruby
All
Burgess.
right.
So thank you for joining us, Ruby. And I usually like to give people a sense of kind of why I ask people to come on. And so it's a range of reasons, but I really wanted to come on and have a conversation with you. Over my years in my life in the family, I've been observing you, observing and kind of watching how you flow throughout the world and how you operate in the world. And I thought it would be great for us to just have a conversation about that. Let's
Oh,
talk about
okay.
that.
All right.
So in our conversation that we had to prepare for this interview series, you told me about, well, I told you what I felt like from my observations, what I saw. I saw education, I saw teaching, I saw engaging with, imparting wisdom and knowledge into family. And then you let me know about like organization and planning and really imparting into the next generation. So I just wanted to like really unpack those gifts more.
Okay.
So again, thank you for joining. I appreciate your time.
You are more than well. I appreciate you for asking me to join.
Absolutely, absolutely. So if you can kind of start with, usually I like to kind of go like in order, like in chronological order, but we can definitely go in whatever way the conversation takes us. But for the sake of starting there, Ruby, when do you feel like at what point, right? Because when I think about gifts, it's like at some point it was some sort of spark or understanding, even within small children, of something they like or they're good at. When did you realize that anything related to, be it wherever you want to start with planning, organization, education, teaching, when did you have any sense that this might be a part of something I want to do or my gift package?
Probably it started in what now would be called the early childhood. uh, but early childhood depends upon your generation. And when I was a young person, uh, early childhood kids did lots of tasks and did kids who are now called early childhood ages did lots of family tasks and stuff. And I always did tasks around and with children. um I was the one, and I wasn't the only one. We were, my sister, whom I think you've interviewed, Gloria, and my brother Leonard. All of us were there together, and we were kind of like the oldest of the
Okay.
cousin brothers and sisters. That is all of my generation of cousins. We were the oldest, with Gloria being the oldest. So we got a lot of those chores, watching the kids and doing things with the children. And I really, I guess, I don't know that I came to having knowledge about myself at that point, but everybody said I was good at it. I was good at working with the babies. I was good at keeping them entertained. I was good at the things we had to do. All of us were good with the chores, making the bottles, getting them ready so that they would have bottles for the day and all of that kind of stuff. We were all good at that. But I seem, or people around me seem to have thought that I had a love of doing that. And so that would be my recollections of my early years of doing things that I later did in life.
Mhm.
So
Can I just interject something real quick
go
about
ahead,
that
please.
part? Because that's good right there. And this is reminding me, Ruby. I don't know if you remember, like some years ago, maybe it's 3 or 4 years ago. It was before COVID, but we were having conversations at one time about like optimal development of the
Right,
child, right?
right,
In the Black.
right.
So that just came back to me, interestingly enough, right now. because you said something that when I interview other people, sometimes they say, right? Because oftentimes they say, and later in life, of course, I didn't have the language for this as a child. I
Right,
didn't
right.
know that. It was just something I was doing. And then
Uh-huh,
oftentimes people say, somebody else said,
uh-huh.
somebody else noticed. So if you could talk more about that, who were these other people? What did they notice? What did they say for you to remember that other people noticed?
Um, we lived in a little village smaller than Marlton. Marlton is a village, but we lived outside of Marlton in a rural area called Spring Valley. And we lived in Spring Valley and with our grandmother. And at that time, or at when Dwight, a cousin brother, was born, he was living with us too because his mom was in college. My mom worked downtown at a store, and my grandmother kind of kept us, right? And we, and even though we were all very young, um, and this is going to be strange to you, but living at that time in Conway County, we had wild horses
Okay.
who ran, and you could hear them coming, okay? You could hear those horses coming from a long way off, and people knew to get inside, get out of the way, blah, 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 right? And
Right.
mother said to me that one time they were running, we heard them, and and everybody took a dive for the inside. And Dwight, who was the baby, was in the wagon outside, all right, in the little driveway that came up to our house. She said, and you were out there trying to get Dwight out of that wagon. You couldn't pick him up. You couldn't do anything, but you were going, oh, we got to get the baby. We got to get the baby. We got to get the baby. And she said she came out the door. She was at home. She came out the door and helped me get Dwight out of the wagon. And we went inside, and then we went up on the porch, and then we watched the horses come through because they were beautiful. It was beautiful to see them running and going through and all of that.
Hmm.
So at that, uh, that's one of the things she told me about me.
Okay.
That I don't remember that event. I remember the horses running. I remember seeing horses, but I don't remember that particular event.
Hmm.
Uh, and they said I was always helping with the babies. Even so, this, because of early childhood, my knowledge of it, I know the age of memory is like 3. That's when you kind of remember back. The age of memory may be different now because as people evolve, we have developed more skills at a younger age. Okay.
Hmm.
So therefore, that was then. So I'm thinking I was 3 or younger, you know. I
Wow.
don't remember that event at all, but I was told about that event. And it was things like that. They said, you always help take care of the babies.
Hmm.
Did that
Okay. Yes, that did. That did. I'm just kind of sitting with that because it's just like that could be important for any adult in the life of a child to know, be it a parent, be it a teacher, be it a auntie or uncle, right? Like that, letting them know what you see. I don't know, for
Uh-huh.
somebody in education that knows about early childhood, do you think that's important? Let kids know what you see, what you notice about them that stands out?
Oh, yeah. In the teaching learning process, that's a part of what you do. Or
Hmm.
for early childhood, especially when children are working with the paints, or they're working with the blocks, or they're working with and I call it work because play is a child's work. I
Hmm.
think we get that confused sometimes, but play is a child's work. And so when they're working with manipulatives, or they're working with uh, in the sandbox, or in the dirt hill, or with the water hose and making mud puddles and all that kind of stuff. They're working. And so
Hmm.
so the adults in their life then should, as they observe them and as they watch them and as they record their behavior, those adults should say to her, I see that you're working on blah, 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 whatever it is. And I'll give you an example when I taught preschool. and the kids had gone into the sandbox and they had dug all of these trenches throughout the sandbox, and they had gotten a hose and they were running water into the trenches. And I said, see, you're putting water. And they said, and I said, can you tell me more about what you're doing? We're building a canal.
Oh,
Now,
wow.
my kids were 3, 4, and 5-year-olds. Okay. So
Hmm.
they said, we're building a canal. And I said, oh, that's good. So what are you going to do? And they talked more about their plan and how they were going to build the canal. Yes, it's important to ask children what they're doing, to notice what they're doing, to
Hmm.
say what they're doing, and say, and then let them tell you what they're doing because they know what they're doing. You don't know. For me,
Hmm.
as an adult, they were just digging trenches in the
Right.
sandbox, right?
But they had much more of an elaborate kind of plan and process that was at play.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
And they
yeah.
you usually know what their plan is. And
Mm,
so one of the things that we did was try to help them develop their plan.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think
Hmm.
that that's good. I'm glad because and just so you know, I told you earlier before we record, but just so people know when I'm looking over, I'm looking at my other screen and my list of
Right.
questions. Um, and this is one that my eyes landed on, and you said it. You said we have to help them to like know and develop it, asking those questions, showing that curiosity, that
Hmm.
connection. I know sometimes they call it, if I'm using the right term, but like serve and return, like that back and forth with them, right? That is something about
Hmm.
that does develop their brain in these wonderful ways. But for you in your life, you talked about that was even in early childhood when that was noticed and then later on told to you. When do you feel like further, if I can use the term stirred or awakened or, nurtured, helped you to understand more about what your path could potentially be? Like even as going into grade school, elementary, what helped to stir that up for you?
Okay, well, in terms of events in my life that helped me continue in the path of working with children, although that's not what I first went to college for. But in terms of that, we babysat all the cousins. We babysat all the younger cousins. Gloria got on the train in Marlton and went to Kansas so she could babysit the cousins in Kansas.
Uh,
Uh, uh, we babysat the people, the cousins right here in town who were younger than we were, and that started in upper elementary and went on to our before we went off to college. We did a lot of babysitting. And when I went to um, College of the Ozarks and got a business degree, but I did do a lot of babysitting to make extra money. I would babysit for people in the town. I would babysit for faculty. I would babysit for whomever. So that continued that working with children. College of the Ozarks at that time had something called Ozark Area Missions. It was affiliated with Presbyterian Church, Riverside Drive, New York, New York. So they had lots of progressive and thoughtful ideas at that time. And
mhm,
so we could choose one of their mission sites for the summer to go
mhm,
and work if we wanted to. I went off to San Francisco, did a recreation program for children. I went to Granite Mountain in Little Rock, did a
mhm.
recreation program for children. I went to, where else did I go? I stayed in Clarksville one year, did a recreation program
Wow.
with children. So I continued working with children all that time, but I did not get a degree at that time
Mhm,
in early childhood or even elementary or even secondary. I got a business administration degree. I did not
mhm,
do education at all at that
mhm.
time. Okay.
Yeah.
So all of those things, always worked with children.
Mhm,
I have always worked with children. And
mhm,
my house, on the block, the lady at the clerk at City Hall, where we have to go pay our water bill, she tells everybody, Miss Ruby was was the neighborhood mama. Everybody played in her yard, and she had all these cards and toys inside for all of us. And I did. I bought all sorts of toys, had them on the bottom shelf of the bookshelf. The kids could come in, they knew where to pick them up, they knew they had to clean up, they knew it
Mm-hmm.
was
Yep.
work and responsibility. And I don't care if you played with it or not, everybody's going to clean up before you leave my house. So
Mm-hmm.
they knew
Mm-hmm.
that, and she
Mm-hmm.
was talking about that. And she has grown kids, she has grandchildren now. But
Oh, wow. So she
yeah.
remembers that.
Oh yeah,
That
she
enough.
remembers that. She
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. What made you think, because Ruby, as you well know, like people can kind of have a sense that whether it's taking care of children, whether it has something to do with nature or gardening, it could be anything, like literally
Mhm.
anything. It could be math or medicine, but
Right.
it's like not everybody sticks with it, right? Like people know it's something that they want to do, but for some reason they don't like launch into it and actually
Mhm.
continue to pursue it. Or what do you think for you helped you to kind of even stay with that in your like adult life, stay with anything having to do with children? Like what I don't know, was it rewarding, was it, if you could talk about what made you stay with that theme in your life.
Okay. I think I'm gonna have to go back then to when I first finished my undergraduate in business, and I
Mm-hmm.
went to Mississippi to work in accounting, the accounting department at a small 2-year another Presbyterian college that was affiliated with a Presbyterian church in, Riverside Presbyterian. I don't know what they're called, what their denomination is called, but that more progressive end of the
Mm-hmm.
Presbyterian church. And I got a job because the one thing that they did was help you get a job when you got to senior year. They started sending you open positions at their institutions.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I chose Mary Holmes Junior College in West Point, Mississippi. I chose it because it was warm, because the other choice was Sitka, Alaska. And I went, oh no. So I went to West Point, Mississippi. And that was being lazy. Let me just say that. That was, oh,
Okay.
I don't have to look for a job.
Okay.
I'm
Okay.
graduating college and I do not have to look for, that's called being lazy. But
Okay.
anyway,
Mm-hmm.
so I chose Mary Holmes. But I can say that Mary Holmes, the work at Mary Holmes is what had a great influence on my life. Okay.
Okay.
Mary Holmes College, this was in 1966, 67, around in there. And Mary Holmes College was the conduit for all anti-poverty money coming into the state of Mississippi, because Mississippi local government, much like our local government today, didn't want federal money because of the guidelines that came along with it. And in
Mm-hmm.
those days, it had equal employment. You had to employ people who were not like you, blah, 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 blah. We know what the civil rights movement was about. And so that college, and I didn't ask, I might have asked, I can't remember, but I wanted to be moved from accounting because I really did not like accounting. A number three pencil, a 10 key ad machine, and a ledger, and,
Okay.
and in a hole. Okay, that
Okay.
was not
We
me.
might
All
have to
right.
circle back to that. That sounds like that was an interesting part of your journey and your path. So we'll circle back, but go ahead. Go ahead.
Anyway, so I moved to be the administrative assistant, high class secretary, and the vice president for extensions, which that was the liaison office for all of those programs coming into Mississippi, the anti-poverty programs. And as a result, a lot of the research came across my desk. And the research on Black people was very racist, was very white supremacist, was very um was very it wasn't controversial to me because I knew it was not true what they were saying about Black families. I knew because I got a lot of family, so I knew what they were saying was not true. But all of that research used the deficit model of Black families and Black children. And because it did, I began to read, and I was reading, and I was going, that, and this is not true. This is just not true. So what I said was, you
As
can't.
you're talking, if you don't mind, if you could, because not everybody might not know what you mean by the deficit model. If you don't mind just unpacking that a little bit, what you mean by deficit model,
Yes,
and then keep
deficit
going. Yeah.
model of research says that because we are African, because we are poor, because we are have large families, because mothers and fathers may not be formally married, um, they see us as deficits of them, with them
Mm-hmm.
being, and like I said, it was racist white supremacist research, because they were the model for by which they were um, comparing. They were comparing Black families and children to themselves. And what I found out in doing research myself is that most of the research that came out by Barats and Bass and I can name a lot of those white theorists, a lot of that came out, they had actually done quantitative research, but they had only looked at Black families. They had never looked at one white family.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, but what they thought they were, that's what they were doing comparisons to. And so consequently, what they came up with, we were, and so people will know these terms, I think, culturally deprived, culturally disadvantaged, um, socially, they didn't say inept, but that's what they meant. That is the deficit model. So that's what they used, and that's what they said about us.
Mm-hmm.
I said to myself as a secretary who is 21, maybe 22 at the time, I said, hmm, you can't teach a child to build a pyramid and not know math.
Mm-hmm.
I know
That's it.
African history. So that I knew African history then. How you gonna teach a child to build a pyramid, which nobody has deciphered since then,
Mm-hmm.
and say they don't know math or how to
Mm-hmm.
teach? How you gonna do that?
Mm-hmm.
How you gonna teach people, someone to invent the element that goes in a light bulb that keeps the light bulb on? Most of them think Thomas Edison did that. Thomas Edison did not. His bulb would not stay on longer than an hour.
Mm-hmm.
Look at look at the bulbs you have. Where did they
Mm-hmm.
come? They came from a Black man.
Okay.
So you can't, I'm saying to myself as I'm looking at this and reading this and typing things that Jim Callis, my boss, had given me, because we did more proposals for stuff, more money to come into Mississippi. I'm going, no, this is
Mm.
wrong. So I decided at that point,
Okay. Okay. You
I'm
decided. I
going
like that.
back
I like that.
into
Somebody decided. You decided. Go
I
ahead.
decided that I'm going
Yeah.
back into early childhood education to
Okay.
debunk all of
Mm-hmm.
this myth, white supremacist myth. And I told Jim, who was European American, I said, Jim, this is what I'm going to do. He said, good deal. And he gave me the name of 5 schools to apply to.
Mm-hmm.
They were the preeminent schools in early childhood education in this country at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So the 5 schools that Jim Callis, my boss, gave me were Bank Street College in New York City, Wheelock College in Boston, Massachusetts, Merrill Palmer in Detroit, Merrill Palmer in Detroit, Pacific Coast College in Pasadena, California, and the Peabody College at Vanderbilt. Those were the 5. Now he said, You don't want this fifth one, Peabody, he said, because they work from a deficit model. All the rest of them work from a strength model. So you do not want Vanderbilt. But if it's the only one that accepts you, you got it on the list, right? But you will get accepted there. I actually got accepted at all five. Oh, Eric
Awesome.
Erickson Institute in Chicago. Eric Erickson in
Eric
Chicago.
Erickson. Oh,
Okay.
wow.
All
Wow.
right.
Okay.
So those were the schools. And I chose Pacific Oaks for two reasons. Um, it was in California. The primary reason at the time was it was in California and warm
Okay.
and nice. Right. That was the
Okay.
primary, let's be clear. Okay. The second reason, though, is I had asked all of the schools for their philosophy of education.
Wow.
And they had provided me with that. And Jim was right. Vanderbilt did work from a deficit model. And
Oh,
so
wow.
therefore, and the others did not. However, Pacific Oaks was a college that had actually started out of a children's school.
Oh, wow.
The children's school was created by 7 families who were conscientious objectors to war. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And when they started the preschool, and it was 3, 4, and 5 year olds at that time, you know, 3, 4, and 5s going into kindergarten when they
Mm-hmm.
started it. But they said the one thing that they noticed of the teachers that they hired, teachers did not know how to teach for peace. They knew how to teach for war. And because
Mm.
they taught for war, they decided they were going to start a college where they were training teachers to be teachers of peace, not war. Now,
What's the
what does
difference
that
in that?
mean?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, like,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. Explain that, please. I'm like really intrigued by that. Okay.
What's the difference? The difference is there's no such thing as groupings. The philosopher, everyone has something to teach, everyone has something to learn, everyone has a gift. They called it talent. You call it gift. Everyone has a gift or a talent. They can teach it to somebody else, and we are all here to learn from the babies in the children's school to the president of the college.
Mm,
We are all here to learn.
right.
They were Quakers, so therefore there were no titles.
Mm,
Titles create division among people. So therefore, the Quaker tradition, no titles for anyone at that school. We were all
wow.
Ruby, Sam, Jamal, Javier.
Wow.
There were no grades. Grading separates people. Grading pits people against each other, trying to compete to get the best grade. Therefore, and that all of that they saw, and I came to realize, you know, they're right. That is teaching for war. That's teaching division. That's teaching
Mm-hmm.
strife. It's teaching a
Wow.
lot of stuff, right? So we
Awesome.
don't
So
want
you
to.
saw that that philosophy, would you say that that resonated with you, even what they sent you and what you learned when you got
Yeah.
that, that connected with you? Okay.
Oh, yeah. Everybody
All
has
right.
something to teach. Everybody
Mm-hmm.
has something to learn. And the details of the philosophy I got after I got there.
Right.
We are conscientious objectives to war. We believe in teaching for peace. This is the philosophy, you know. We believe
Mm-hmm.
in this, da da da. We are Quakers. We follow the Quaker tradition. There are
Mm-hmm.
no titles, blah, 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 blah. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
That what, but the details of it in way, how do you teach for war versus teaching for peace is something I had to learn once I got there. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
their philosophy resonated with me. The one closest to it, well, the three, there are 4 that were closest: Eric Erickson, Bank Street, Merrill Palmer, and Pacific Oaks were the 4 that had basically the same belief system.
Okay.
Open progressive education, Dewey, Piaget, Vygotsky,
Mm-hmm.
as the theorist, the thing. Oh, and they had a theoretical base. You know, most schools that I had gone to didn't have theoretical bases. we work on the theories of. Our work
Mm.
includes the theories of da 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 da. Eric
Wow.
Erickson.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I like
And
Eric
you're
Erickson. Yeah.
you're a psychologist, Clark Mastakas.
Okay. I'm gonna have to look into
Okay.
that. Okay.
Okay. So that's what we work from.
Mhm.
Therefore, everything we do is based in that. And we know the
Mhm.
research and we know what the kids are supposed to look like. And we're not
Mhm.
trying to make a 2-year-old look like a 5-year-old. That
Mhm.
again, for war, right?
Wow. Wow. Like
All of
it
the
met their developmental needs in way like holistically, it sounds like in ways that
right.
would, yeah, like really tap
Strengthen the
into the
inner being of that
mm,
particular person.
yes, yes,
Period.
yes, yes. I love that. What is it do you feel like what part of you do you feel like that resonated with, right? Like even before you got there, we got their philosophy, but as you were there, it seemed like you knew it connected with you. So that's what I'm wondering is because that may not have connected with everybody. Maybe even the people, you know, right? Like it just may or may not connect with it. So what was it in you that you think that connected with, and do you think that was something? This is kind of getting philosophical, but do you think that whatever that was that they connected with in you was something you were born with? Or something that was nurtured in you over time, or both, if that like
Something
makes
that,
sense.
because I do believe a lot of things that we do are learned, okay?
Okay,
And
okay.
because they are learned, they're learned from the significant others in your life. And I guess that is Vygotsky's social learning, except I wouldn't
Mm-hmm,
have called it that then, but that is what I
mm-hmm,
believe. And I believe then. My grandmother, your great grandmother,
mm-hmm.
Clarence
Okay.
Sullivan Fleming, okay?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Ella Mae Fleming Burgess. Okay. Uh,
Yeah.
okay. People are people. People are the best they can be at any given time. You
Mm-hmm.
accept them as they are, not what you want them to be, but
Mm-hmm.
what they are. And
Yeah.
you realize they have something that is important to you, and you have something that's important to you.
Mm-hmm.
You're as good as anybody,
Mm-hmm.
but no better than anybody else.
Yeah.
On
Yeah.
the other hand, my principal in high school, Hammond King, who was the first scholar I knew and taught us all that African history and stuff I knew was because of Mr. King. But Mr. King would say, you are as smart as any person on this earth, but better than most.
Okay.
Okay. Now,
Okay.
back to,
Well, can I know I keep in it,
okay.
but I
No,
just, if
that's
you just
okay.
could,
That's
this
okay.
may
That's
be a
fine.
little bit of a
Go
just
ahead.
kind of for me. So I don't know. Hopefully the audience will benefit from this as well. But like if you could talk more, because you mentioned first like your mom and your grandmother. So since we're family, this may be a little bit for me. I don't know if you don't mind saying a little bit more about them
But that's what I
and
was
who
getting
they
ready to
were.
go back
Okay,
to.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
what
yeah,
I
yeah.
was
Okay,
going
great,
back
great,
to.
great.
Now
Yeah,
back to Big Mama. We called my
yes,
grandmother, your great grandmama, Big Mama.
yeah.
Big Mama, we were kids. Mother worked out of Marlton, and she had to spend the night in the town where she worked as a teacher. Okay. We stayed with our grandmother, and that was Big Mama. And Big Mama would have us go see about the people who were older in the community, see if they need something. If they need it, you are to do it. Whatever it is they need that you can do, you are to do it. You are not to come back to this house with any payment for having done it. You are to do it because it is your responsibility. So you have a responsibility for your neighbors and for your community. You have a responsibility for your family. All right. Then the train still runs right by our house. You know where it runs. Okay. So the
Oh yes,
train
yes, yes. Uh-huh. Mhm.
back in my day, today you have homeless people. Homeless people rode, and I think they still do catch the freight trains and ride from across the country, But they would get off the train and come to our little 3-room house, 3-room shotgun house. We were poor. Okay. They would come. We would put the chairs out for them. My grandmother would cook, and we fed them. You are responsible for your neighbor. You are responsible for people. But the main thing I think in terms of what resonated with me and Pacific Coast, the connection was the gifts that everybody had, the talents that everyone had, the knowledge that everyone had, and you are to share it with others, and you are to be able to receive theirs whether you
Mm-hmm.
agree or disagree. And if I bring Mother into it, Mother, Gloria, and I, and Anita, when she came to live with us, used to have these long discussions about philosophical issues, right?
Wow.
And my brother would walk in and we would say, well, Leonard, what do you think? I think I'm going to bed because I am not getting into that discussion.
Okay.
And you know, being a family member and knowing family, you know what those discussions could be. And everybody had their point. But we never ever went to bed angry with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And we never ever quit speaking to each other.
Mm-hmm.
That is, you know, and at Pacific Oaks, we had what's called a day of alternatives, where people came in from all walks of life. That's where I met in person my first Black Panther at this little Quaker school. And they were
Wow.
doing sessions on self-sufficiency. That's what they would come for. Their whole session was always on self-sufficiency and the need for African and African American people to be self-sufficient. Now, everybody, you know, everybody at this little European school in Pasadena, California, didn't agree, but they were open enough to bring them in to this day when everything closed down. And the Panthers
Mm-hmm.
would be here, the ex-addicts would be here, the homeless people would be that we could get would
Wow.
be there, the
Wow.
scholars would be somewhere. They would all have their room and you could float and have conversations with everyone.
Wow. Wow. That's just that's so I'm just like thinking through that, just all of the just the skills, the heart, the I don't even know all the words to describe like what it takes to pull that together. That is just so
Mhm.
amazing to
Yeah.
see that.
Mhm.
We just need more of that, obviously.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, yeah, we do. I mean,
And
just to
I
say
have
the
no
least.
idea
Mhm.
if that was in the 60s. I went there in
Yeah.
69, came home in 72 or 73, something like that. And that was then. I cannot tell you what it's like today.
Okay. But that's what it was then when you were there and
When
when
I
you
was
kind of
there, that's what,
intersected, when
and
it
for
was
many
part of your
years
path.
after that. Yeah, and for many
Wow.
years after that. Yeah.
What would you say? Because this kind of touches on another thing I was wondering about. So when people
Okay.
are birthing their gifts and they're on their journey, we're all on a journey, you know, as long as
Hmm.
we're breathing, we're on a journey of
Hmm.
continuing to walk out our
Exactly.
gifts and our talents. And so it's gonna have some ups and downs. So as you talked about that, it's like almost their philosophy maybe answers this question in some ways. But I was wondering, even as you came across these deficit models that represented probably how a lot of people thought at that
Oh,
time, not just
most
in Scott.
people in early childhood thought that.
Yeah,
Hmm.
most people, and then being like you say around people where there are very fundamental differences. So I guess
Right.
I'm wondering, how were you at that time, mid to late 60s, early 70s? And there had to have been some challenges. It had to. I mean, I just couldn't imagine. I don't want to put words to it for you, but it had. I'm assuming it didn't flow smoothly without its challenge the whole time. So I'm wondering, how did you navigate that? What helped you to navigate the challenging points?
I'm going to have to exit Pacific Oaks because even though we had challenges, we always talked about them. I can remember one of the European people saying, oh, they were doing something on fairy tales and they did something about uh, uh, it was whoever that person was who was in a castle and they hung their hair out. So, I don't even know the name of that fairy tale, but you know the one I'm talking about, maybe.
Oh, Rapunzel, maybe?
Rapunzel. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
So one of the white professors said, oh, and you can just relate to, and all the black folks in the room said, no, we cannot.
Okay.
And she said, okay, I got it. Now, and we were talking about values and all that kind of stuff. And finally, when she couldn't get what we were talking about, and we knew what she would, because Black people have to know the white world in order to survive
Right.
in the United States. If we don't know it, we cannot survive here. We will die here if we
Mhm.
don't know them. And so we knew what she was saying. She could not get what we were saying. And finally, she said, "Oh, you just tell me what to care about, and I'm going to care about it." But that's kind of the way we work through all of our stuff.
Right, right. Yeah.
She said, so I'm going to exit there and
Okay.
say the first job I took in Arkansas, because I came from there back to Arkansas, and I took a job with the University of Arkansas as a research assistant, but teaching in a multi-level classroom where and it was the Kramer School. It was a research project with the Little Rock Public Schools and University of Arkansas, Fayetteville. And okay, so when I came, that particular school, Kramer School, worked out of a deficit model. And some of the challenges I had was the director of the research, the researcher, the main person, Betty would say that the children at Kramer School, because it served the east end of Little Rock, didn't know who their mothers and fathers were, or might not. In these families, kids don't know who their parents are. And I said, that's a lie right out in faculty meeting. I said, that's a lie. I said, they don't understand family the way you understand family, but they understand family. And most of them, even when born, what we call out of wedlock, know who their fathers are. I say they know, and they do have men in their lives because people in the community serve as those surrogates. I said, so you all don't know enough about the culture of African American people in order to have this school and this research project because you're producing erroneous information. Now, Betty and I remained friends until she passed, but I got out of there in 1 year. Now, when I got out of there, because I said, I'm not doing it, I went to Lee County Cooperative Clinic in Marianna, Arkansas, where I stayed a number of years. But could not work with that philosophy. And actually, there was a person who was one of the main researchers, Steve Lehane. He left and went to, it wasn't Ohio, Kent State. And he said, come with me, Ruby, come with me. I got a start, blah, blah, blah. But I didn't want to leave Arkansas. So I did not
Mhm.
go to Kent State. I instead went to Marianna, Arkansas to Lee County Cooperative Clinic, which I'm glad I did. However, the people at Pacific Oaks said, oh, Ruby, we wondered how long you were going to last there. That's all
Uh-huh.
they said. But so
Okay.
that was a challenge. And my kids called me Ruby, as they did in all over. And of course, the rest of the teachers couldn't stand that. And they were actually mean to my kids because my kids called me Ruby. So no, it wasn't a good situation.
Wow, wow. I know we're getting on to our time, but I wonder if I could call this a gift, right? Because I feel like not everybody is able to do this. Like what as you're talking, it sounds like somehow you were able to have, and this is just the language I'm thinking, a level of assertiveness, empowerment, like something that didn't limit you from being able to speak, as some people would say, your truth or to speak in your authentic self. So we're definitely going to have a part two so we can get into that more. But if you don't mind saying a little bit about that, am I hearing that right?
You're hearing that right. And I'm going to
Okay.
go back to Big Mama because Big
Um,
Mama and Mother taught us set your own standards, figure them out, set them, and you remain true to those standards no matter what. I'm sorry, no matter what other people say. And if indeed you do what other people say just because they do it, that is what you will get a spanking for. Okay?
that's where my
All right.
grandmother got that from.
Oh,
Got it. Man, connection. Mama used to get in trouble for that. Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You, no matter what. And but you
Mhm.
always have to be able to justify that. So
Yeah.
yes, we were raised to be assertive. that's just the way we were raised by our grandmother and our mother. And to an extent, my mother and father divorced when we were young, but he too had a family who wanted us to be, and we were part of that family, wanted
Okay.
us to be assertive. You know, Aunt Al, did you ever meet Aunt Al? But you probably heard of Aunt Al. But
Yeah.
anyway, who
Mhm.
was over at Mom Al. We just
Okay.
weren't ever raised to be timid about our thoughts or
Okay.
what we believed, and we would be able to say it. And got told on by adults in the community would tell our grandmother, well, I said so and so, and Ruby might have said blah, blah, blah in answer. And she was thinking I would get a spanking, and my grandmother would say, well, you might want to come up with a better answer.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay.
So the
Yeah.
things like that, I think help us to be assertive. And then
Mhm.
throughout life, we were in situations where it came and it not in handy. My principal called me stubborn, and because I would argue points in the
Mhm.
classroom with him. But now in the segregated school, and I can't say all segregated schools, let me say L.W. Sullivan High School, we were encouraged to form our opinion, state our opinion, and be assertive about it.
Wow. So they came not only from the family, which is like also I'm
Mhm.
definitely gonna reflect on it. Like I even feel that in here when we talk
Right,
about that
exactly.
family. Um, and it also though came from the larger community though. Like well at least maybe not everybody within it, but within the school, within the education,
Definitely within the school, the educational system, the
the education.
segregated educational system. Let's
Yeah,
be
and I know
clear.
that's key.
That's
That's key.
that's key. It's key
Mm-hmm.
that yeah,
Okay.
this is, you need to, we used to have debates. They would make us have debates at the school over
Mm-hmm.
the Du Bois thought about Black education and the Booker T. Washington thought
Mm-hmm.
about Black education. When we were
Yes.
in high school, we would have to do debates about that. We would have to take
Wow.
sides and do a debate about that.
Wow. Wow. That's good.
We talked about issues. Oh, I can remember once in 11th grade, somebody was talking about African Americans in South Africa. And I said, you can't compare African Americans to South Africans. What you have to use as a comparison would be Native Americans. And they went, no, no, I said, who got their land stolen? Who who is pushed back on a reservation in the United States and in South Africa on a Bantu stand? Who? Look at it. It was the native peoples. Now, in terms of personal treatment, you can talk about it, but you cannot compare what they went through in South
Yeah.
Africa with what we went through the slave trade. They're home in their place getting their stuff taken. That's Native Americans in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
We were
Mm-hmm.
having this big argument in class, and the principal who taught the class had gone to the bank. He came back in and he heard us and all of that, and then
Yeah.
he helped us to deconstruct it. And in
Mm-hmm.
the end, as we deconstructed, the other people in the class that I had been arguing with, some had been sitting quietly listening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They said, okay, because Mr. King helped them walk through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. To understand it more clearly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just always so much for us to continue to unpack and talk about. Ruby, we will talk offline about having a part two, but thank you for sharing just the beginning. I feel like we haven't quite really made it past, right? It sounds like the earlier part of your career, your education and your training. So we definitely have more to talk about with how your gifts have continued to be nurtured and how you've used your gifts and can just to impact others and impact generations and education and all of this stuff. So we'll continue to talk about it. But thank you for joining us for this first part of this It's a Process conversation series. So again, thank you for joining us and we'll be back for part two soon.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you for being patient with those long answers.
No, it's all good. Thank you very
Okay.
much.